Before I start, I will be spoiling this amazing webtoon, so if you haven't read it, then go do that. But anyways, Hardcore Leveling Warrior is a comic on webtoons. It's like a more interesting version of SAO. But for those of you who've ignored the warning at the beginning and are confused on what this comic is about, let me explain. It takes place in a world that has developed a video game that you can play in your sleep. A game called Lucid Dream. Simply plug in your headphones when you go to sleep, and you're in the game. The main protagonist, Ethan Gong, or the Hardcore Leveling Warrior, once ranked number 1 in the game, now has fallen from grace and is trying to regain his former strength. He's accompanied by his employer, a kid paying him to level up, a kid named Dark, and finally a swordswoman, Sora, who admires Ethan a lot. Ethan is the main character, but I wouldn't call him a hero. He's scummy, he's selfish, and he's arrogant. This isn't misplaced, however. He didn't get up to the top just off luck. He's smart and resourceful. But he is known for his luck. Dark is just a kid, but he's rich and willing to risk it all just to see his grandpa. Now, these two get a lot of attention, but neither of these two are a hero. If anyone, I say the true hero is Sora. It all comes down to the hero's journey, a 12-step timeline for heroes, and Sora fits these steps the best. I will go in order and show each step in the story of Hardcore Leveling Warrior. Now, for a hero, you'd expect her to be the first one seen. However, Sora isn't seen until chapter 2, but she's seen with the first step of the hero's journey. This step is when we're introduced to the hero before the journey starts. We get to see and identify with them, see their point of view on the world, and see how they act in this world when there's no adventure going on. And we see this in Sora with one way: food. We see throughout the entire story that Sora loves food, and we're introduced to her by her simply standing in a line waiting for a famous Yopai grill skewer. And we get to see her morals in this too. We see that she's willing to fight for food, but not just for food, but the food that belonged to her, the food that she paid for. She is seen to be morally upstanding, standing up to those who seem stronger just to do right or protect someone. We see this later when she protects Ethan after he's lost all of his power, simply because he's precious to her, which is when the next step happens. This is as simple as the step is called, just when the hero is called to do something out of the norm, something that disrupts the normal happening or even a quest. This moment actually happens twice to Sora. The next chapter, we get to see why Ethan is precious to Sora, because years ago, he saved her, later giving her the advice to get stronger, which caused her to train harder. The actual adventure, the story of the webtoon, starts when Dark, the kid, asks Ethan to help him level up, where Sora joins up because Ethan simply asked her to, which moves on to the only step that really isn't here. When the hero tries to back out of the adventure due to fears or insecurities. Really the only part that isn't a full-on step or moment in this webtoon. However, this feeling of not being as good as the others is a feeling that Sora is constantly feeling. Her main purpose for traveling is to prove herself to Ethan, which brings us to our next step. Another obvious one, when the hero meets a mentor to gain confidence, advice, or training. And this comes much later in the story, in the form of Lilia, and also in the form of the Ego Sword, a pile of goop that she gets a couple chapters before meeting Lilia. It's known as a sword with a personality, and it does act like an infant, but it is quite powerful. However, she doesn't really know how to use it. Lilia, however, is an Ego Sword user, and during the combat tournaments, Ethan makes sure that these two are paired up together, so Sora can see how an Ego Sword user fights. And then we see Sora using her sword much more proficiently. And later, she even trains with Master Swordsman, Ethan's old friend, to gain real-world experience and tries to learn the move Moonlight Slash, one of Ethan's most used moves, which brings us swiftly to an event that propels the story forward, typically raising the stakes and directly affecting the hero. Also, the point of commitment. Now, the point of commitment can also be like a point of no return. And the point that seems the closest to this is when the final part of the combat tournament starts, the PvP rounds, where Sora tries her hardest, not for fame or fortune, but to impress her idol, Ethan. and the stakes cannot be higher here. It's do or die, which brings us to a simple one to understand, where our heroes face tests and enemies and find out who they can really trust. Which is really what the first round of the PvP tournament is all about, where Sora fights a group from Yopai Land as a part of Team Dark. Sure, she isn't the main focus of it, but she's a main component, where it's shown she's mastered the Moonlight Slash ability, something that she states must have taken thousands of swings to master. And while she is defeated, the team wins, and Ethan tells her that he's very impressed that she can master it, a point of pride for Sora. Then comes a step that's a little more confusing than the other steps, where it's just preparations for a big event that's going to happen soon. Really, another step that's a bit tricky to pin down. However, this is after their PvP rounds, after their win, when they're relaxing and watching other fights and eating. Nothing too interesting happening during this event. However, next comes an extremely important step in this journey, where the heroes face their greatest fear, confront this situation in a difficult challenge, and experience death. And this is obviously the Trial of the Dragon, where they helped a lone shark known as Hearteater, someone who's sworn loyalty to Dark. Hearteater is a former Dragon Knight, and when he used his powers during the PvP round, the dragon got real mad at him, and made his new boss, Dark, and his friends, Ethan and Sora, do the Trial of the Dragon, where they each face a karma that represents them, and go through the trial to test their skills and their emotional level. Dark fights with his grandfather, slowly watching him die. Ethan has to quest with Arms, his old guild leader and someone he cherished dearly, so that when she died, he got really emotional. Sora, however, doesn't journey with anyone, but she does have a unique system where she has a certain number of revives, so she continually experiences death over and over again. Ethan is represented by Sloth, Dark by Pride, and Sora by Ignorance, as she is an innocent child, a person who believes that they can achieve anything with hard work and determination. At the end, she faces the Ethan that saved her back then, saying that she's still not strong enough. The whole point of this trial is to defeat the inner you, but the you that cannot be defeated. It's a purposeful contradiction. And Sora learns that she can rely on luck sometimes. She's someone who's relied solely on her hard work, but she has luck on her side too. Which brings us to after the ordeal, the hero gains what they went out for. In this case, it's Hearteater's freedom. But they also all gain the title of hero, which means they can all use hero items. Dark gets the Curse of Darkest, a band that helps restore mana. Another name for this step is Seizing the Sword, and that's exactly what Sora does. The weapon Sora gets is the Light Sword Will, a laser sword that gets bigger the more heroic you are. And even later, when Sora is losing the fight, she does something that's quite strange. She dies. However, thanks to her ability, she doesn't. She ranks up from Swordswoman to Great Swordswoman. And she combines the Light Sword with her Ego Sword, creating Ego Sword Will. Not only a hero weapon, but a Sora exclusive weapon. She gains her own sword, and later she brandishes her own new skill. Now, Hardcore Leveling Warrior isn't done yet. As I'm writing this, we're only on chapter 166. And as I'm recording this, we're only on the after part of the first real chapter, which is really confusing but really exciting because it means we get more Hardcore Leveling Warrior. So her journey isn't really done yet. So we still have some time before we finish the last 3 steps. And I haven't analyzed any of the other chapters after 166 to say if there are certain moments in these chapters or if they're not steps at all. Now, I made this to establish how Sora is one of the best characters, not even just in webtoons, but in general. She's strong and she never gives up. She's hardworking and determined. She lacks a certain something that the other group members have, but she keeps on going. She's one of the members that we should all look up to the most. Out of all the protagonists, she has a lot going for her. And although she's ranked up, she still has a lot more development to establish. So look out for Sora, the true hero of Hardcore Leveling Warrior.